is remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Upon which our congregations in Woodbury and Meriden make their home was not empty wilderness when Europeans first arrived in Connecticut. We begin each of our services acknowledging this fact as a step on the road to justice. There are 5 recognized indigenous tribal nations in Connecticut: the Mashantucket Pequot, the Mohegan, the Eastern Pequot, the Golden Hill Pawcatucket, and the Shagatoke. The Mattatuck Unitarian Universalist Society and the U Church in Meriden acknowledge that our congregations occupy the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of these nations. In offering this land acknowledgement, we commit to learning more about these hosts and neighbors, and we affirm indigenous sovereignty, history, and experience. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Tony Lorenzen, the minister at the Mattatuck Unitarian Universalist Society and the Unitarian Universalist Church in Meriden. And all of us want to welcome you to our Sunday service this morning. We're glad you're here. This is the final Sunday in our month-long look at the spiritual theme of beloved community. And this morning I'm going to reflect a little bit on friendship. I'm going to reflect on levels of relationship and what Parker Palmer and his Courage and Renewal organization call circles of trust. And all of that goes into looking at small group ministry, which we'll talk about in a way a little bit different than I had planned. We begin our service, as always, with lighting the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice.
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers, to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, when our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts dwells within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
There are 1,062 different kinds of birds that make their homes in the jungles and wetlands and along the coast of Burma, also known as Myanmar. And once upon a time, those 1,062 birds did not get along at all. They were always making a terrible ruckus. Why do you flap your wings so fast? Your feathers are too red. With that technique, you will never catch a worm. Often the birds got so carried away that they would say, "I'm better than you." And the other birds would reply, "No, I'm better than you." And there was no friendship ever among the birds. And not much fun either. Finally, the pheasant grew weary of this. He didn't want to quarrel, so when Crow came along, ready to pick an argument, Pheasant said, "Crow, you're just a better bird than me." Crow was so surprised. Those words warmed his heart, and he replied, "No, Pheasant, you are a better bird than me." Pheasant's heart felt warm. The two struck up a conversation. They got to know one another and found that they got along very, very well. Before long, they decided to live side by side. The two birds enjoyed one another very much. Now, their conversations were completely different than they had been in the days of arguments. One day, when Pheasant stood stock still, Crow noticed and said, "That's a good way to avoid being seen by enemies." And another time, when Crow was building a nest, Pheasant said, "Those sticks will make a good strong nest, but have you thought about a way to make it softer inside?" Crow looked at the nest and then his chest and began to add some downy feathers. Talking and getting along like that made it easy to learn from each other. The two friends' affection for one another was obvious. The other birds were very surprised. How could Pheasant and Crow spend so much time together without arguing? Some of the birds decided to test their friendship. "Pheasant, why do you spend so much time with that good-for-nothing Crow?" "Don't say that," replied Pheasant. "Crow is a better bird than I am, and he honors me by living with me and being my friend." The next day, they went to Crow. Crow, why do you spend so much time with that good-for-nothing pheasant? Don't say that, replied Crow. Pheasant is a better bird than I am, and he honors me by living with me and being my friend. The birds were deeply impressed by Crow and Pheasant's attitude toward one another and their friendship. They began to wonder, why do we always fight and quarrel with each other? They watched how Crow and Pheasant treated one another and soon learned that it wasn't so difficult to be kind to each other. They also learned that when they practiced compassion in the manner of Crow and Pheasant, life was much more enjoyable and a lot more fun. And that is how friendship and respect developed among the birds in Burma.
This morning, my presentation was titled Circles of Trust, and I wanted to talk about small groups in terms of small group ministry. There was a small group ministry in Meriden and a small group ministry at Moose when I arrived, and at the beginning of the pandemic, I started yet more small group ministry online. It's my experience that about once a year, you do a service in a congregation about small group ministry, and more people usually try it out. And it's exactly what happened for us last year. I want to do that again this year, using some of the voices from this past year's participants. And we just weren't able to get a lot of people to give us statements this year for various reasons. And I wonder if that's not what was supposed to happen in the long run, because this morning's talk is not originally what I was going to talk about in terms of small groups, but maybe it's what I needed to talk about in terms of small groups. I don't need perhaps to invite you to small groups, although I do want to, and I think they are incredibly good and powerful vehicles of transformation, and I've enjoyed the small group I've led here as much as the small groups I've led anywhere. It is one of the most powerful parts of ministry as well. Yes, please do try the small group if you have not. Please come back if you've left. It may be different than it was before. But maybe I don't really need that invitation this morning as much as I need to talk about how each of us already has small groups that we already belong to. And maybe this morning we need to focus our attention on getting the most out of those groups that we possibly can for ourselves. And at the same time, we'd be making those groups better. There are definitely different levels of trust that move in parallel with the depth of healthy relationship. You know, from partners, very close family, friends, extended family, classmates, coworkers, teammates, fellow hobbyists, and yes, every committee and team at church, even the choir, is also a small group. It is a tragedy of the pandemic, I believe, that we've lost a lot of the various circles of trust, people with whom we entrust some part, if not all, of our authentic selves. And there's a way, I think, to build these various levels of trust at these certain concentric circles of trust. As you get closer to the center, the trust is more complete, and as your circles of relationships spread out further and further, that trust obviously lessens, depending on how well you know the person. So yes, I want you to try a small group here, small group ministry. But just as enthusiastically, I encourage you to put the principles of small group ministry into practice for yourself, if not everyone, in every small group you belong to, because the small group ministry approach is valid for building trust and relationship and support at any level. Even if you are only one person, the only person in a certain group practicing these things, the entire group will be better off for it. For example, when one leader on a church team practices some of these things, the entire team does get better. Perhaps the most powerful tool of the small group is a method pioneered by Parker Palmer and his organization, Center for Courage and Renewal, and they call these circles of trust. It's a small group of people, usually not terribly large, big enough to have some depth to it, 8, 10, 12, 16 people. And of these groups, they are a place that meet on a regular basis for a set amount of time or indefinitely. And they are a place where trust is built so that people can hear their own heart as well as just be a supportive presence for others. Parker Palmer says, and this is from his book, A Hidden Wholeness, if we are willing to embrace the challenge of becoming whole, we cannot embrace it alone, at least not for long. We need trustworthy relationships to sustain us, tenacious communities of support to sustain the journey toward an undivided life. Taking an inner journey toward rejoining soul and role requires a rare but real form of community he calls a circle of trust. So, Courage and Renewal believes that there are various principles they follow with a circle of trust. And this is what they say, and this is from Courage and Renewal. Everyone has an inner teacher. We all have access to some inner truth. Identity, soul, heart, spirit, will. Our inner work requires both solitude and community. Our inner work must be invitational. You can't force someone to do inner work. Circles of trust are never places where you must share or die, as Courage and Renewal says. One of the principles is our lives moves in seasons, and our lives need different things in the different seasons of our lives. An appreciation of paradox enriches our lives and helps us hold greater community. And Courage and Renewal says that circles of trust teach us to approach many polarities that come with being human as both and, not either or. So that we hold polarities and dichotomies in ways that open us up to new ways of seeing things, new insights, new possibilities. Also to live with greater integrity when we see ourselves whole. Integrity means integrating everything we are into our sense of self. A hidden wholeness underlies our lives. Whatever brokenness we experience in the world, there is a hidden wholeness just underneath our surface. And Courage and Renewal says the capacity to stand and act with integrity in the tragic gap between what is and what could be or should be. In addition to these principles, Courage and Renewal says that circles of trust have things they call touchstones, attitudes, approaches, philosophies. Of these, I believe the no teaching, no fixing, no setting each other straight is probably the most important and most powerful. It is not our success in winning arguments and debates that will forge the relationships that build beloved community. It is the success we have in creating circles of trust and how good we are at not fixing and setting each other straight. In the end, we will build better beloved community at all levels by listening, not talking. So as pandemic has gone on, and I've participated in the small group I lead, I have really felt these touchstones to come through and really be valuable as somewhere these exist during pandemic life right now. And those say, the touchstones for Courage and Renewal say, give and receive welcome. Make sure it's a hospitable place. Be present as fully as possible. Don't let your attention wander. What is offered in the circle is by invitation, not demand. No share or die, as they said. You'll speak your truth in ways that respect other people's truth. That's a big one, especially in the divisiveness we find ourselves living in today's culture. No fixing, no saving, advising, or correcting, no setting each other straight. It is the hardest guideline of all their touchstones to follow, philosophy to practice. Learn to respond to others with honest, open questions. When the going gets rough, turn to wonder. If you feel judgmental, defensive, just step back and say, wonder what brought them to this belief, or wonder why I'm feeling like this. Attend to your own inner teacher. We learn from others, of course, but the most powerful thing of the small group, the circle is trust, is hearing yourself. So trust and learn from the silence as well. It is a gift in our world. We do not have lots of silence in our daily lives. Observe deep confidentiality. A circle of trust means building and holding the trust. And know that it's possible to leave when you need to. We've had some people leave our small groups this year. As the pandemic has increased isolation, I have noticed it has also reinforced an individualism. As the pandemic has brought an increasing trauma, as it got worse, I've noticed it brought increasing aloofness, and more people withdrew deeper and deeper from others for various reasons. I think one of the most traumatic experiences at low level that lots of us don't have up front consciously all the time is we have lost a lot of our daily interaction and acquaintances the barista, the conductor on the commuter train, the person who owns a full-service gas station and pumps the gas, a bank teller, waitress at a greasy spoon diner, the bus driver on your bus route. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, we all have these people in our lives that were our acquaintances or that we saw in passing, and they're very important. When I first bought a house, I bought a house in the town I grew up in, and I lived about a mile from downtown, and I would walk to the post office, among other things. And a childhood friend's older brother was working at the counter at the post office in town. So I loved seeing this guy when I went to the post office. Due to my being in line and his working and helping others, we only got in one or two quick exchanges, as I got close enough to say something, and he stole seconds away from whoever he was helping. And the exchange was slightly longer, but not much if he was the person who waited on me. How's your mom? She went to the hospital. Oh, sorry. She's all right. Gallstones. She'll be fine. Say hi to your brother when you see him. We'll do, right? We both liked going to concerts, so we'd talk about what live music we'd seen real quick. Good show. Yep, liked it. Go. It wasn't much as far as conversations go, but I loved these little catch-ups and interactions with him. The short, just saying just more than hello. It gave my trip to the post office an extra boost of groundedness, of feeling at home. I felt seen and appreciated. A few decades after we'd last even seen each other, I was someone who got a genuine friendly greeting and small conversation, not just a fake, I'm supposed to smile at everybody. And perhaps these types of instances of the smallest groups we find ourselves in, duets of acquaintance, are so important. The smallest group we can have is ourselves and one other person, so a passing acquaintance interacting with you is a small group. And the place where we are most guarded, the trust most minimal, there is trust there, but very basic things. You won't hit me in the face, you won't call me names. A person we know by passing them right into them over and over again and are pretty sure they're aware of us, we may have spoken to a little, This is the smallest level of a small group where there's trust at all. If we take the small group circle of trust to the next level, it's encountering strangers where there's no trust at all. There are no levels of trust. Where all the principles of the small groups and circles of trust are least present, and where practicing the touchstones of circles of trust can be most beneficial as well as most difficult. Many of you have asked me for some type of programming, a class or a Sunday service to focus on how to better communicate across the vast differences that separate us from our neighbors and fellow citizens these days. So I will do that. As you take a brave step toward exploring small group ministry with us, I will be scheduling service and a 1-hour online session, which will probably repeat at regular intervals during the year, on tips and tactics and skills for learning how to have difficult conversations across differences. Something beyond just active listening and speaking assertively, not aggressively. Practicing the touchstones of the circles of trust, we can build beloved community, real beloved community. It begins, like all difficult journeys, with that single step. Each of us is called and can practice the touchstones that build trust wherever we go, among whatever group of people we find ourselves. As we slowly march toward life without social distancing, let's get ready to practice a circle of trust. Practice those touchstones and principles with the passing acquaintances we'll now actually pass on the street and shopping and on the train once again. The waitresses, the baristas, the conductors, and so on. The only person in any system you can truly control is yourself. Our American culture and the world is rife with hate and killing, oppression and discrimination. It seems that one person can't make much of a difference, but we prove this false all the time. One person can talk another person into talking people into talking a congregation into providing sanctuary to some people who are facing unjust deportation. One person can talk to one person to talking a congregation into, to talking a community into doing much better at combating food scarcity and food insecurity. One person can talk to one person to talk a congregation into attempting dismantling white supremacy culture and become allies supporting Moral Monday Connecticut and showing up every Sunday afternoon with Justice Woodbury and Justice Southbury. It may not seem like it, but practicing the methods of small group ministry, the circle of trust, can make great changes in your life and in the world around you. I've seen people in congregations put in the practice of the methods of small groups as they worked and served on church teams and committees, and I've seen congregations change because of it, going from distance and competing factions to people who worked better together as one big team, all rowing in the same direction, all working for the same mission toward the same goals. Eventually, it will be what heals us. Not how our talking and debating win over others, but how our listening and integrity of heart changes us and our adversaries at the same time into some level of a circle of trust. And as those circles get bigger, we build beloved community.
When I first started to work at UUMeriden as a president of UUCGB in Stratford, I was introduced to small groups. It was such a good idea to me that I trained as a facilitator and helped to lead the first UUCGB small group. That was about 5 years ago. The introduction of Soul Circle monthly themes and abundant resources has vastly improved the experience of small groups. Today, those groups are different than they were. If you haven't been involved in a small group for a few years, or perhaps never been involved, I invite you to give it a new try. Please join me in a wonderful spiritual process where we get to know each other better.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
Good morning. I'm Pinky Chalemi, a member of the Social Justice Committee. Today is the fourth Sunday of the month, and here at Moose, the first and fourth Sundays of the month are Share the Plate Sundays. Half of the collection will go to the Social Justice Fund. Those funds are used to support local causes and beyond that reflect our values. We recently started to remake 250 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the Greater Waterbury Interfaith Ministry Soup Kitchen. Those supplies cost us well over $100 a month. So please give as generously as you are able so we can continue to support this organization and other organizations as well. Thank you.
Ours is a spiritual community where we find and forge connection. We trust in the strength of our mutual support, knowing how it has sustained us day after day, year after year. Today, we hold in the warmth and light of this community Cassandra Hardaby, who's going through a difficult time, Angelique Mativier, who will be having surgery, Steve Barnes, who is battling cancer, Paul, Richard, and Rhiannon Klein, and all of us who are continuing to mourn the passing of Barbara Klein, Connie Welton, who remains seriously ill and in intensive care, Randy Heath, who's recently had surgery, and everyone, everywhere struggling with disease and illness, both visible and invisible. Alongside all of these concerns, we know there are joys and sorrows and prayers that remain private and that we have not spoken this morning, and those too have their rightful place here. May the love and support of this community encourage each of us towards ever more compassionate living. The kindled lamp of our chalice reminds us that we are kindred souls here. We are never alone in the human condition. There is a love that cares for us all. You should join me in the breath prayer by Sheridan Voicey. Spirit of life, we receive your love and release our insecurity. We receive your joy and release our unhappiness. We receive your peace and release our anxiety. We receive your patience and we release our impulsiveness. We receive your kindness and we release our indifference. We receive your goodness and we release our unspiritedness. We receive your faithfulness and we release our disloyalty. We receive your gentleness and we release our severity. We receive your ability for self-control and we release our self-indulgences. May each of us be able to live and breathe these gifts of the Spirit of life: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness. So may it be.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them gardens instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall flow down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring remnants of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where the oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come, build a land, my people we seek. Come, anointed by God, and create peace where justice shall roll down like waters and praise like an ever-flowing stream.
Our service may be drawing to a close, but there's always coffee hour. Please pour a cup of your favorite beverage and zoom on in. Join us for coffee at go.uucentralct.org/coffee. That's go.uucentralct.org/coffee. We'll see you in a few minutes.
We've come to the end of our service this morning, and so we've extinguished our chalice flame, but we know we take that flame with us in our heart wherever we go. It is the fire of our faith. It is the fire of our community. May it inspire us to build beloved community by creating circles of trust, small ones and then larger ones, until we create a circle of trust, acceptance, and love that is the entire beloved community. Go in peace, holy ones. We'll see you here next week.